Hi, this is Ed Hoffman. I'm the president and founder of Competitive Business Solutions. I just want to take a moment to introduce the second part of our interview with Kim Ernzen, the COO of StandardAero. In this segment of the interview, Kim takes some time to talk about the effectiveness of communication and how she's used that through the organization, how she's gone about building culture and building cultural cohesion, and ultimately how she went about building effective teams, both in her past job and her current. So I hope you enjoy this segment, and I look forward to your feedback. Thank you. CCAs for folks who are listening in, or that stands for Circuit Card Assembly,
Yes.
and they're just to jump in, fairly complex. These things went into what kind of product, Kim?
They went into large land-based radars. So think of it's basically the eyes, ears, and brains of your radar system. So when you say complex, it's not. It's a very dense board with a lot of circuitry on it, with a lot of transformers, and you have to be able to take one set of input data and transition it to a different set of output data. And yeah, they're highly complex.
And important product. It protects
Yeah,
our friends around the world. I mean, it really goes into all sorts of different products, and it's names that you read about in the newspaper every day. They
absolutely.
talk about how the missiles are knocked down, or sort of the adversaries are not achieving their missions. It's all coming from these kinds of products.
Exactly. Yeah, they are legacy products. Think of the Patriot, weapon system. Think of Spice 6 radar that's now going out on the next generation of ships. So yeah, it's a cutting edge technology. That's where Ed and I got a chance to once again work together and look at how you start to transform organizations, how you again look at making the impossible possible, and really getting outside of kind of that classical thought process to really drive and propel a business forward. So that was a really fun time. Again, we made a lot of really good things happen.
So from our careers intersected a little bit, but then you took off. Our firm was still kind of working in the muck and the mire, trying to help boards be built and all that kind of thing. And then as your career really started moving forward at Raytheon, and you were down in
Sure.
Tucson,
Yeah.
you took on some more substantial leadership roles, executive roles. Maybe I think would be interesting if you could share your experience, maybe some of the leadership traits that became important to you,
Sure.
and how you've learned maybe to hone those and work on those. But what kind of leadership traits became really important to you in
Yeah.
those
So
different
I'll
roles?
through two dimensions. First when I went down to Tucson, I was the VP of operations. And so when you're in a functional role that's supporting the business, you definitely have to spend, in my opinion, more time focused on the organization, the design of the organization, really looking at how are you growing talent in the organization. And what I really loved about operations is you had a huge variety and diversity of skill sets. You had, the technical engineering side, where you had, people with PhDs working on process controls, all of our, very elaborate test equipment and designing and developing that, to, industrial engineers who are helping us plan the capacity of the factory floors, to then, our frontline leaders and moving more into our hourly workforce where you still needed, leadership skills, especially those frontline leaders and the people that end up running your factories. And so it really, I think, stretches you as a leader to really look at how do you evolve a communication style so that you can talk across all of the variety of your organization, be able to hone your messages when you're doing an all hands, right? Where you can hit points that everybody feels like they're a part of the team. Because one of the things you know, uh, is just part and parcel of myself is it's a team, right? I grew up playing sports. I attribute a lot of life lessons to sports. And in organizations, no single person gets anything done. It really does take a team. And what,
That's I'm glad
go
you
ahead.
jumped into it, because I was going to follow up with what are some of the lessons you use from sports? Because from my standpoint, It's often used, and one of the things that I started looking at in our practice and when we work with folks and we hire people, we're looking for folks that maybe haven't always had success. So it's part of
Right.
team, but it's also the ability to kind of pick yourself up and move forward. When you're building a team, what are some of the leadership traits that you look for? If you're going to hire an executive or bring somebody in, what's important to you? And if there's some pieces of that sort of fit that sports analogy, I think
Sure.
that would resonate as well.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you kind of touched a little bit on it for sports. I mean, it's all about continually improving yourself, right? In sports, even when you win a game, you still go back and look at what could I have done better? Did everybody play their part appropriately? And there's always a level of personal accountability because each of us has a spot we sit in on a team, and we're all expected to step in and do the best we can every day, and our team members are counting on that, which means you have to know, what is it that I'm supposed to be bringing? What do, my team members to the left and the right expect me to be able to hand off and deliver to them? And knowing that they're counting on me makes me want to improve my performance. And so when I'm interviewing and looking at talent to join my team, I look at, one, you have to have the results, right? I mean, obviously you have to be able to deliver the results, but I very much look at the how they go about delivering it. Are they folks who are genuinely interested in, making their team successful? I always listen to, and one of my favorite things is the ninth letter leader. You know what the ninth letter leader is? Somebody who uses the word I. I did this and I did that. Um, that's my least favorite attribute in leaders. Because again, as individuals, we only get things done with and through our people. And, if we can't get people on board with the vision of where we're trying to go, with what the ultimate kind of North Star is and where they see themselves fitting into the equation to help get the organization there, the tougher it's going to be for you as a leader to be successful. So when I'm interviewing people, I listen to the language they use, and I continually look for ways on which they've tapped into their talent pool, how they've grown that talent, see if they have that attitude of yes, if, not no, because, right? It's super easy to sit back and say why we can't do things. And, you know, that's interesting, but kind of irrelevant. As businesses, we have to continually evolve. And that's what sports teams do. Even the Super Bowl champions, and, or the NCAA champion or the NCQA champions, every year they come back and they figure out how are they going to do it even better.
So from a it's it the way you're describing this, it's you're building a culture, you're building a team, you're building a culture, you're shaping it both with um, the folks that you're bringing on board, but then there's folks that are already there. I'm sure with Raytheon, there's a team in place, and you start augmenting that team. So maybe talk through a little bit, if you'd like, around the type of culture that you kind of started talking about. It's a team. How do
Hmm.
you strengthen that culture? How do you know when you sort of have it right? Like, what's sort of the indicators, or what would be sort of the red flags if you think you kind of got it wrong and you know you need to make some adjustments?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'll touch a little bit on the organization that I joined last summer, StandardAero. So when I looked to join this organization, one of the things that really hit home for me was exactly that, the culture. As I started talking to the leaders, you could tell that it was a team that was in it for each other and not focused on, well, I'm going to go drive, my piece of the business, and I don't really care what happens to everybody else. And that's to me very important. An organization, and while yes, it has its own spaces and locations, and this company, we're a company made up of 50 different sites, so we've got places all over the place, and have grown through acquisition. But when you walk around, everybody completely believes in, the one StandardAero culture. Now, with that, right, always comes challenges. But if it starts where people have that belief of we're a one company, we want to make sure that we continue to operate as a company, then you can start to get it's, that connectivity and driving a company in one direction. And so that was one of the things that I absolutely loved. Previous experiences, one of the challenges to me, you asked about red flags, is when you start to see the entrenching. And I always use the acronym, like the theys and the thems. When people start calling out functional organizations or pieces of an organization where they're like, well, they, and I always tell my team, I'm like, I don't know who they is. Our badge, StandardAero. And so, you're going to talk like a team. And the corporate salute, yes. And, I tell people, like, as a leader, if we set the environment to where we can have the honest, fact based, data driven conversation and make sure that we're creating the environment where the teams feel very comfortable not polishing and filtering the data. And I tell our teams this all the time. I recognize that stuff has been filtered and filtered by the time it gets to me. But if I, as the leader, and along with my, leadership team, have created it to where you only want to bring 30% of the data, we're going to make a bad decision. And that's a foul on us. And so we have to make sure that we continually are challenging the status quo and being, it's okay to bring the ugly data. That's the only way we're going to be able to tackle it and really get to the right answer organizationally and for the company. And so that's one area I continually focus in on, because I always, I can only make the answer I can make or the decision I can make based on what's been a part of me. Because I certainly don't live out on the floors every day.